The first thing I saw was my wife's blue reading chair upside down in the gravel, one leg snapped clean off, while my son-in-law's mother stood in my courtyard telling two movers not to chip the fountain. My suitcases were lined up by the gate like I'd checked out of a hotel. And on my own balcony, in a white linen set I had paid for last Christmas, my daughter looked down at me and said, in the calmest voice I'd ever heard from her, "Don't make this ugly, Dad. It's theirs now." My fingers went numb around my car keys. I actually heard one hit the stone. Then I asked about the notary stamp. Everything on that patio changed. By sunset, 3 people were lying, 1 officer was listening, and I finally understood why my tax bills had stopped coming. If you've ever had family smile while stealing from you, subscribe and stay with me, because the locks were only the beginning. The truth is, the betrayal did not start at my front gate. It started in my kitchen, 3 months earlier, with a plate of peach slices sweating on the counter and my daughter standing beside the sink pretending she was worried about my blood pressure. My wife Rose had been dead for 11 months by then. 41 years together, and the house still hadn't accepted she was gone. Her yellow dish towel still hung from the oven handle. Her reading glasses were still in the little ceramic bowl by the lamp in the den. If I opened the hall closet too quickly, I could still catch the dry, powdery smell of her lavender sachets rising from the coats. She was the one who called our house the villa, half as a joke. It wasn't some billionaire mansion. It was a stucco house with a red tile roof on the north edge of Tucson, with a cracked stone courtyard, iron lanterns I welded myself, and a blue front door Rose painted one April because she said every house deserved one brave thing. I built most of it with my own hands. Weekends, nights, days off, whatever I had. I laid tile in rich people's kitchens all over Arizona for 32 years, then came home and mixed mortar in a wheelbarrow under a floodlight so my daughter could grow up in something better than the apartment over the tire shop where Rose and I started. Every archway in that house has my fingerprints under the plaster. Every door hangs square because I measured twice even when I was dead tired. The olive tree in the courtyard was planted the week Lauren turned 8. Rose said one day it would throw enough shade for grandchildren. That kitchen had seen birthdays, fevers, exam results, college applications, fights, apologies, and one terrible night when Lauren was 16 and came home crying because some girls at school had called her trailer trash with eyeliner. I remember standing right there by the refrigerator, holding her shoulders, telling her, "Nobody gets to tell you what you're worth." That line came back to me later so hard it felt like punishment. That day in the kitchen, Lauren cut peaches into neat little crescents and asked if I'd been remembering to take my medication. "Every morning," I told her. "You forgot Tuesday." "I forgot Tuesday because you moved the pillbox." She laughed like I was being charmingly difficult. "I moved it because you keep everything spread everywhere, Dad. If something happened to you, I wouldn't even know where the important papers are." That should have sounded normal. It didn't. Not because of the words. Because of the way Evan looked up from his phone when she said papers. He was at the table, ankles crossed, expensive loafers hooked around the chair legs, wearing that soft little smile he always used when he wanted something without appearing to want it. He came from one of those families that called cruelty standards. His mother, Pamela, wore white year-round. His father, Grant, shook hands like he was checking whether your skin matched your shoes. When Lauren married into them, I told myself love could bridge class. What I meant was I hoped my daughter would never look at me through their eyes. "You should let us organize things," Lauren said. "Insurance, title, utilities, property tax. It's not safe having it all in random drawers." "It's one drawer," I said. "It's chaos." Rose's papers had lived in that drawer for years. Mortgage release, deed copies, appliance warranties, the title paperwork from when we finally paid off the place, even the note Rose wrote and tucked into the folder the day we burned the last loan statement in a coffee can out back. "No more owing anyone," it said in her slanted handwriting. That line would matter later too. I let Lauren organize the drawer. That was my first mistake. The second one was confusing attention with love. After Rose died, Lauren started showing up more. At first it felt like comfort. She brought soup. She took me to a cardiology appointment after I had that dizzy spell in March. She sat on the edge of the guest bed one night and cried and told me she missed her mother so much she sometimes forgot how to breathe. I believe that. Maybe she did miss her mother. But grief and greed can live in the same house. I know that now. What happened next was small enough to dismiss. A property tax notice didn't arrive. Then a water bill came already opened. Then I found a surveyor's pink flag stake near the side wall by the citrus beds. I pulled it out and asked Evan if he knew anything about it. He didn't even look embarrassed. My dad had a guy take a quick look. A quick look at what? The lot line. Nothing major. Why is your dad looking at my lot line? Evan spread his hands. Future planning. That phrase sat in my chest like a fish bone. Future planning. A week later, Pamela asked me at Sunday dinner whether I had ever considered transitioning to somewhere with less upkeep. She said it while cutting into the roast chicken Rose used to make with lemons and rosemary from the courtyard pots. The silverware clinked against plates. The ceiling fan turned slow overhead. My granddaughter Mia was under the table feeding peas to the dog. I looked up and said, "No." Pamela dabbed her lips. "It's just practical. Stairs, maintenance, liability. These old independent homes become burdens. This old independent home was built in 2004. She smiled the way people do when they think politeness makes an insult disappear. "You know what I mean." Grant took a sip of wine. "A property like this should be leveraged correctly." I stared at him. He had the nerve to gesture toward my ceiling beams with a fork. My beams. My house. My dead wife's hand-painted plaster niche with the little ceramic bird inside it. And he said, "There's real value here." Lauren didn't defend me. She just kept cutting Mia's chicken into smaller pieces. But that wasn't the part that broke me. What broke me was what Mia said after dessert, when she ran into the den, climbed into Rose's blue chair, and asked, "Papa, when Grandma's room becomes Nana Pam's room, can I still sleep in here?" The room went silent so fast I could hear the ice machine hum. I looked at Lauren. She set down her glass and said too quickly, "Sweetheart, that's not decided." Mia frowned. "But Daddy said after summer." I still remember the taste in my mouth. Metallic. Like I'd bitten my tongue. Evan chuckled. "Kids hear half a conversation." "No," I said. "Sometimes they hear the whole thing." Lauren followed me into the kitchen afterward, heels clicking hard. "Please don't do this," she whispered. "Do what?" "Turn everything into a confrontation." "A confrontation?" "You know what I mean." "No," I said. "What I know is your daughter just announced plans for my bedroom." She pressed her palms to the marble counter I had saved 8 months to install for Rose. "Nobody is trying to hurt you." "Then say it clearly. Is someone planning to move into my house?" She exhaled through her nose. "We're talking about options." "Whose options?" "Everyone's." That answer told me more than any confession could have. I barely slept that night. Around 1 in the morning I went to the kitchen for water and saw a light under the study door. I thought maybe Lauren had fallen asleep over her laptop. Instead I heard Evan's voice, low and tight. "No, once the transfer is indexed, he can scream all he wants." I stopped breathing. Then Pamela, sharper than I'd ever heard her. "You promised it would be handled before my sister comes in August." Evan said, "It is being handled." I stepped back before the floor could creak, took my water, and walked all the way to the guest bath to drink it because I didn't trust my own face. The next morning, Lauren kissed my cheek and asked whether I still kept my spare keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. I lied and said no. I moved them before lunch. That was the moment I stopped telling myself I was imagining things. Here's the part people always ask when they hear this story: why didn't I throw them out right then? Because it was my daughter. Because betrayal doesn't arrive wearing a villain's cape. It arrives carrying groceries. It asks about your medication. It brings your granddaughter over on Thursdays. It uses your wife's recipe cards. And because for most of her life, I had been trained to make room for Lauren. When she was 10 and wanted ballet lessons we couldn't afford, I sold my '68 pickup shell and took restaurant repair calls at night. When she got into a private college and the scholarship didn't cover housing, Rose and I refinanced. When she and Evan wanted a vineyard wedding they absolutely could not pay for, I cashed out part of my retirement and told Rose we'd make it up. Rose hated that one. She loves you, she said in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling fan. But love is not the same as respect, and you keep paying as if it is. I laughed it off. A month before Rose died, she made me promise something in that hospital room. The blinds were half shut. Her lips were dry. She kept rubbing her thumb over the brass house key on the ring I'd left in her hand because even then she said the weight of it calmed her. She said, "Don't let anybody make you small in your own house." I told her nobody would. That promise sat on me like a stone after I heard Evan behind the study door. 3 days later, everything changed. I went downtown to the county recorder's office. I didn't tell anyone. I put on my work boots, took the brown envelope with the deed copy Rose and I had kept for years, and drove myself. The woman at the counter had reading glasses on a chain and a kind face that made me instantly want to lie to her and say I was only there for routine paperwork. Instead I said, "I need the latest record on my property." She tapped for less than a minute. Then she looked at the screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen. "Sir," she said carefully, "this parcel was transferred 62 days ago." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my body rejected the sentence. "Transferred to whom?" She turned the monitor slightly. "Marigold Family Holdings. Managers, Grant Hollis and Pamela Hollis. My son-in-law's parents." The room narrowed. I had to grip the counter with both hands because I suddenly wasn't sure where the floor was. Recorded by quitclaim deed. Signed by me. Notarized by Tessa Cole, mobile notary. Date of execution, April 14th. April 14th was the day I was under hospital observation with N4 in my arm and adhesive leads across my chest after the cardiologist kept me overnight for an irregular heartbeat. I know that because Lauren was the one who drove me there. She sat beside my bed, scrolled her phone, and said, "Just sign anything they put in front of you so we can get you home." My stomach turned so hard I thought I was going to throw up right there on the county floor. I asked for copies of everything. That's when the mystery stopped being a feeling and became a shape. A forged deed. My forged signature. Her husband's parents' company. A mobile notary. A hospital date. Not confusion. Not family miscommunication. A plan. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. I drove straight to Rose's oldest friend, Nora, who had retired 5 years earlier from title processing. She lived in a low adobe place with 3 rescue cats and a habit of telling the truth without cushioning it. She read the packet at her dining table, mouth tightening with each page. "This is fraud," she said flatly. "I know that. No, I mean sloppy fraud. They got greedy. Look here." She tapped the acknowledgement block. "The stamp number matches a real commission. But the seal impression is uneven, like it was pressed on a soft surface. And your signature, whoever copied it got the shape but not the pressure. Your hand always drops at the end of the H." I stared at my own fake name. Nora leaned back. "File a fraud affidavit. Get a lawyer. And listen carefully, do not warn them before you secure the paper trail." I have to talk to my daughter. Arthur, she said, using the tone Rose used when I was being stubborn. You can talk to her after she can't move another inch. I wish I had listened perfectly. I listened enough to call a lawyer that afternoon, a woman named Elena Rees who handled elder financial abuse and had the kind of voice that made chaos sound temporary. She said, "Come in first thing tomorrow. Bring every document, every message, every medical record you have from April 14th. Do you think we can undo it? I think people who forge deeds often make mistakes. Our job is to catch them before they sell, refinance, or encumber the property again." Encumber. That was the word. They weren't just taking my home. They were going to use it. I drove back to the villa with the copies under my seat and a pressure in my ribs that had nothing to do with my heart. The house looked the same from the street. Bougainvillea over the wall. Olive trees shimmering silver green in the wind. Rose's wind chimes tapping the stucco. But the second I pulled into the drive, I knew something had shifted. My study door was open. I never left it open. Inside, the filing cabinet drawers were half out. The brown envelope where I kept the original mortgage release was gone. So was Rose's old fireproof document box from the top shelf of the closet. Lauren came into the hall carrying folded towels. "Dad, you're home early." I looked from the towels to her face and knew she knew. That cold little stillness people get when their lie has been touched. "Where's the red box?" I asked. "What red box?" "The fireproof box with our original documents." She set the towels down slowly. "I moved some things because the closet was a mess." "Where is it?" Evan appeared behind her, smiling like we were in the middle of a neighborly misunderstanding. "Let's all take a breath." "Where?" I said again. "Is the box?" Lauren crossed her arms. "Why are you acting like this?" "Because I had just seen my own home stolen on a government screen. Because your husband's parents were on the deed. Because you drove me to the hospital and smiled while someone forged my name." But I didn't say any of that. "Not yet," I said. "Bring me every document you touched." Her eyes hardened so fast it startled me. "You need to calm down." That phrase, "calm down," always used by the person trying to control the temperature after lighting the match. I stepped closer. "Did you transfer my property?" Evan answered before she did. "That's not an appropriate way to frame." I turned on him. "I didn't ask you." Lauren lifted her chin. "We made legal arrangements because you were refusing to think responsibly." There it was. Not denial. Not even shame. "We? You can't maintain this place forever." "It was transferred to his parents." "That was a temporary structure." "Temporary?" I laughed once. "My forged signature is temporary?" Her face changed at that word. Small. But real. That was all I needed. "You had no right," I said. "I had every right to protect what Mom built too." "No," I said quietly. "Your mother built this with me. Not with those people." Pamela's voice floated from the courtyard. "Is there a problem?" I looked past Lauren and saw her mother-in-law arranging white hydrangeas in my clay urns. My body went cold. I should have left then and gone straight to Ruiz's office to accelerate everything. Instead, I made one human mistake. I said, "Get out of my house." Lauren's face flushed. "You don't get to speak to me like that." "In my house?" Evan stepped forward. "Actually." I held up a hand. "Do not finish that sentence." I left before I either shouted or collapsed. And the next morning, before I could meet the lawyer, I came back from the pharmacy and saw Rose's blue chair upside down in the gravel. That was the scene I opened with. My luggage. My boxes. The movers. Pamela directing traffic. Grant on the phone near the fountain like he was supervising a remodel. Mia sitting on one of my storage tubs coloring suns with a broken crayon. And Lauren on the balcony saying, "It's theirs now." I still didn't know how far they'd go. Until I asked about the notary stamp. Not, "How could you?" Not, "Why?" Those questions were for movies. Real betrayal responds to specifics. So I looked up at my daughter and said, loud enough for everybody in that courtyard to hear, "Which notary stamps a deed while the owner is on cardiac monitoring?" Pamela's hand froze on the hydrangeas. Evan's face lost color. Grant straightened. And Lauren, who had prepared speeches in tears and accusations about my temper, wasn't ready for that. "What are you talking about?" she said. I took the county copies from my truck and held them up. "I'm talking about Marigold Family Holdings. I'm talking about April 14th. I'm talking about my signature on a deed to your husband's parents while I was wearing a hospital bracelet." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Evan came down the steps too fast. "You're confused." "I'm not confused." "You absolutely are." "Then why aren't you answering?" Lauren descended after him, bare feet on the tile, jaw set. Up close, she looked like Rose around the eyes and absolutely no one around the mouth. "We did what needed to be done," she said. "Say it clearly." Her nostrils flared. "Fine. You were spiraling after Mom died. Bills were late. Papers were everywhere. You were forgetting things. Evan's family offered a structure that would keep the property in responsible hands." "Responsible hands?" "Yes." "And whose bed is in my bedroom?" She looked away. That hurt more than the deed. Pamela finally stepped forward, pearls bright against her tan skin. "Arthur, nobody is trying to dishonor you. But sentiment cannot run an estate." "Estate?" Like I was already buried. I laughed again, and that laugh scared even me. Mia looked up from her crayon drawing. That's when I made myself stop. I would not give them the performance they wanted. I pulled out my phone and called Elena Ruiz from the driveway while all of them listened. She answered on the second ring. I said, "They've locked me out. They moved my belongings outside. And they're occupying the property." Her voice sharpened instantly. "Do not leave. I'm sending an associate, and I'm calling the non-emergency line. Say as little as possible until someone arrives." I put the call on speaker only long enough for Evan to hear one word, fraud. That rattled him. But they still weren't done. By the time the officer arrived, Lauren had already shifted strategies. She started crying. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just enough. She told the officer she was worried about me. That I'd been unstable since losing my wife. That I'd become fixated on paperwork and accused everyone of stealing. That they had asked me to stay with a friend until I settled. That officer, a young guy with sunburned ears, looked overwhelmed before I even opened my mouth. Then Grant handed him a folder. A folder. Inside it were printouts of 2 missed utility payments, a note from a neighbor saying she had heard me raising my voice one night, and this one almost impressed me, a draft petition for emergency conservatorship prepared but not yet filed. They weren't just taking my house. They were preparing to take my credibility. I felt the air leave my lungs. That should have made me panic. Instead, it made me precise. I said to the officer, "I'm filing an elder fraud complaint. The deed was transferred during a hospital stay. Ask them for the original notary journal entry. Ask them why my property is in his parents' holding company instead of my daughter's name if this was care." The officer looked at the papers in his hand, then at the movers, then at my boxes in the gravel. That tension bought me time. Ruiz's associate arrived 20 minutes later in a navy suit, carrying a leather file and absolutely no patience. Her name was Simone, and from the second she stepped out of the car, the entire temperature changed. She did not ask anyone how they were feeling. She asked, Who changed the locks? Nobody answered. She turned to the movers. Was this represented to you as a lawful owner eviction? One of them, a stocky man with a neck tattoo, muttered. We just got hired. By whom? Pamela said. This is absurd. Simone looked at her. What's absurd is moving a homeowner's possessions into gravel while title fraud is being investigated. The word investigated landed exactly where I wanted. Evan started talking fast. There is no fraud. Arthur signed documents months ago. Great, Simone cut in. Then you'll have no objection to producing the originals, the notary journal, and the hospital visitation timeline. He shut up. That should have held them. It didn't. Because 2 days later, Lauren filed the conservatorship petition anyway. And in it, she described me as disoriented, paranoid, financially unsafe, and incapable of independent decision-making. I read those words in Reese's office while a copy of my medical records sat open beside them showing fully intact cognitive assessments from every appointment. Do you know what hurts most about being betrayed by your own child? It isn't always the theft. Sometimes it's the language. The way they rewrite you. The way years of work, sacrifice, memory, and plain visible reality get replaced with a version of you that serves their appetite. She knew exactly which buttons to press. Widower. Heart scare. Late bill. Grief. Isolation. She took my pain and turned it into paperwork against me. Ruiz folded her hands and said, This may actually help us. I stared at her. How? Because overreaching people often document their own malice. Then my phone rang. It was Mia. She was 9, and she never called me directly unless someone was sick or she wanted help with math. Papa? She whispered. Hey, sweetheart. Daddy says I'm not supposed to bother you. You're not bothering me. A pause. I heard a TV in the background and dishes clinking. Then she said, I found Grandma's key. My throat tightened. Rose's brass house key stayed on an old ring with a tiny silver bird charm. After Rose died, I kept it in the ceramic bowl by the blue door because I couldn't bring myself to carry it. It belonged to her hands somehow, not mine. Where did you find it? In Mommy's purse. In the zipper part. The hidden zipper. I closed my eyes. Okay. And Papa? Yes? Daddy was mad because Mommy recorded over something, but I don't think she did, because it's still on my tablet. Everything inside me went still. What's on your tablet, sweetheart? The talking. What talking? The one from Grandma's room. When Mommy was yelling. I looked at Ruiz. She was already reaching for a notepad. Mia, I said, keeping my voice soft. Can you tell me exactly where the tablet is? That was the moment I realized they had been sloppy in more ways than one. Ruiz arranged for a neutral third party, one of those things I never knew existed before all this, to retrieve the tablet through Mia's maternal aunt under the pretense of collecting school materials. We listened to the audio in Ruiz's conference room the next morning. It started with scraping. Then Mia singing to herself. Then a door. Then Lauren's voice, sharp and low. I'm not leaving him with nothing. Evan. Nobody said nothing. Lauren. Your mother did. Pamela, unmistakable. If your father remains in the master suite, this entire arrangement becomes impossible. Lauren. It's still my house too. Grant. Legally, dear, it's our company's asset until refinancing is complete. That was the point. I felt Reese's eyes flick toward me. Then Lauren again, and this was the line that changed something in me forever. He'll be fine in assisted living for 6 months. Once the loan clears, we can revisit. Assisted living. Loan clears. Revisit. Not confusion. Not care. Not a daughter making a desperate mistake. A plan with phases. The mystery thread that had been winding through missing mail, survey stakes, open bills, and late-night whispers snapped into one brutal shape right there in that office. They were going to move me out, borrow against my house, and debate later how much of my life I got back. I didn't cry. I thought I would. Instead, I felt something colder and stronger settle into place. Rose had been right. Love without respect becomes hunger. From that point on, I stopped trying to save my daughter from the story she had written herself into. Rees moved fast. Fraud affidavit. Temporary restraining motion. Motion to deny emergency conservatorship. Request for the notary's journal. Notice to the county recorder. Freeze on any refinancing activity if possible. And one more thing. She found Tessa Cole, the mobile notary. Tessa first insisted she had properly acknowledged the signature. Then Rees informed her, very gently, that a notarization attached to a fraudulent deed recorded during a documented hospital observation could cost her commission, her livelihood, and possibly much more if she had skipped personal appearance requirements. People get honest when their own skin warms up. By the next afternoon, Tessa had amended her story. She admitted Evan had met her in a coffee shop parking lot with a pre-signed packet, and told her the older man was too ill to travel and had verbally consented. She had never seen me, never checked my identification in person, never administered acknowledgement. She had notarized there. When Rees told me that, I sat back in the chair and stared at the ceiling tiles for a full 10 seconds. Then I said, "So they didn't just steal from me. They made other people dirty too." "That's how these things usually work," Rees said. "The entitled rarely lift the whole weight themselves." I thought they were done. I was wrong. Because once Lauren realized the conservatorship wasn't going to scare me into folding, she did the cruelest thing of all. She sent me a message. Not an apology. Not even anger. A photograph. My bedroom emptied. Rose's side of the closet bare. And on the bed, folded neatly, the quilt Rose's mother had sewn us when we got married. Under the photo, Lauren wrote, "You're forcing this to get ugly." I stared at that message until the letters blurred. Then I typed one sentence back. "No. I'm forcing it to stop." She didn't answer. The hearing on the emergency petition was set for Thursday morning. But Wednesday night, Pamela hosted a family welcome dinner at my villa. I know that because one of my neighbors, a widow named Gloria who hated drama but loved truth, sent Rees a picture of valet cones at my gate and texted, "They're entertaining." Entertaining. At my house. Rees called me at once. "We have enough for an emergency possession order tonight if the judge signs before morning. If we get it, I want them served where they can't pretend this is a misunderstanding." "Do it," I said. I barely slept. At 7:12 the next morning, Rees called back. Signed. I sat on the edge of the motel bed I had been using for 4 nights and held the phone so tightly my knuckles hurt. "What now?" "Now we go home." The villa looked obscene in the morning light. Valet cones at the gate. 2 rental linen tables under my olive tree. White florals in the courtyard. My wife's copper serving trays laid out with pastries and fruit. Pamela's laugh floating through the open window of my breakfast room. Guests were already there. Church friends of the Hollises. 2 realtors. Some couple from Grant's Club. People in beige linen and sunglasses, carrying mimosa glasses through the house Rose and I had spent 20 years making. I got out of Rees's car behind her, while a deputy sheriff parked behind us and another car from the county investigator's office rolled in after that. Then Tessa Cole arrived separately, face pale enough to pass out. That was no accident. Rees wanted everyone in the same place. One scene. One truth. No private revisions later. The valet kid moved to stop us at the gate until he saw the deputy step out. Inside, Pamela was just telling a group of women, We're so relieved to have finally stabilized things for everyone. When she turned and saw me, the glass in her hand actually clicked against her teeth. Conversation died around the courtyard in little pieces. Lauren came out of the hall in a cream dress I had seen Rose wear once to a fundraiser, altered at the waist. That did something ugly to me, but I kept walking. Evan appeared behind her. Grant stood slowly from the patio table. Ruiz did not waste a second. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Elena Ruiz, counsel for Arthur Bennett. We are serving an emergency court order restoring immediate possession of this property to Mr. Bennett pending adjudication of a fraudulent deed transfer and associated elder abuse claims." Nobody spoke. Then everybody did. "Pamela, this is inappropriate." Grant, "You cannot barge into a private family event." Evan, "This is a civil dispute." Lauren, "Dad, please, not like this." The deputy lifted a hand. "Enough." That helped. Ruiz handed the order to Grant because he was physically closest, and I suspect, because she knew it would wound him to receive authority from someone he had dismissed. He scanned the first page. The color left his face in stripes. "What is this?" Pamela snapped. Ruiz answered for him. "A judge has found probable cause to question the validity of the recorded deed and to prevent further occupation, transfer, or encumbrance. You are all required to vacate immediately." A woman in oversized sunglasses quietly set down her mimosa and backed away from my fountain. Evan tried bluster first. "Based on what evidence?" Ruiz turned slightly and gestured to Tessa Cole. The notary looked like she wanted the earth to open. "Based on the fact," Ruiz said, "that your deed acknowledgement was executed without personal appearance. Based on hospital records showing my client was under medical observation at the time of purported execution. Based on audio evidence discussing plans to remove him and refinance through your parents' holding company. And based on your own petition claiming incapacity while simultaneously asserting he knowingly transferred away his residence." That last part hit. Because it was the contradiction they couldn't smooth over. If I was too incompetent to keep my house, how was I competent enough to sign it away to them? Grant looked at Evan. Not as an ally. As a liability. Lauren's lips parted. She turned to her husband. "What audio?" Evan didn't answer. "That was delicious, and it was awful." Pamela recovered first. "Arthur," she said, taking one step toward me, voice dipped in fake hurt, "we have only ever tried to create a safe plan." I looked around at the floral arrangements, the linen napkins, the borrowed status draped over my courtyard, and said, very evenly, "A safe plan would not begin with a forged deed." "It was not forged," Evan snapped. Tessa found her voice. "I never met him." Silence. Real silence this time. Heavy silence. Witness silence. Evan turned on her. "What are you doing?" She backed up a step. "I told them the truth." Grant muttered something I won't repeat in front of church people, but there were church people standing right there, and they heard it. Lauren stared at Tessa, then at Evan, then at me. "You said the paperwork was temporary," she whispered. He kept his eyes on Ruiz. "It was." Grant wheeled on his son-in-law. "Temporary? You said title was secured for financing." Pamela hissed. "Not here." But here was exactly where it was unraveling. The county investigator, a middle-aged woman with a practical haircut and a thin folder under her arm, stepped forward then. "For the record," she said, "any further representations regarding ownership should stop now." She addressed me directly. "Mr. Bennett, do you wish to re-enter the property today?" I looked past her at my blue front door. Rose's blue door. The same one Pamela had hung a ridiculous spring wreath on. "Yes," I said. The deputy nodded. "Then everyone not authorized by Mr. Bennett will need to collect essentials and leave." Lauren finally exploded. Not at me. At Evan. You told me this was to protect the house. It is. You told me your parents were holding it because it was easier. It is easier. You told me my dad would always live here. Evan's face hardened in a way I think had probably existed long before marriage, just hidden under better lighting. Your father cannot manage this property. It was never your decision, I said. He turned to me. It became my decision when you became a risk. There it was. The pure thing underneath all the euphemisms. Risk. Not father. Not grieving husband. Not the man who paid for their wedding and fixed their sink and watched their daughter when Lauren went to Cabo with friends and claimed it was a work retreat. Risk. Mia appeared in the hall at that exact moment, clutching Rose's brass key ring in both hands. I don't know how long she'd been listening. Long enough. Mom? She said. Lauren whipped around. Mia looked at me, then at the room full of strangers in my house, and asked the question nobody wanted a child to ask. Are we the bad guys? The words hit every wall. Lauren's face collapsed. Pamela said, Mia, sweetheart. No, Mia said, backing toward me. Papa built this. I had to look away for half a second because my eyes burned. That moment changed the final tone of everything. Not legally. Humanly. Because children are where performance goes to die. Ruiz kept it moving. Deputy? He cleared his throat. You heard the order. Please gather personal items only. No fixtures, no documents, no electronics not clearly belonging to you. Pamela started arguing. Grant started making calls. The guests began leaking out, embarrassed and eager, not one of them willing to anchor themselves to sinking people. Evan tried one last push. He stepped close enough that I could smell his cologne and said under his breath, You're blowing up your family over a technicality. I looked him in the eye. No, I said. I'm blowing up a theft. He opened his mouth again. Then the investigator asked him if he would like to explain why a holding company controlled by his parents had listed my property address in preliminary refinance correspondence. That ended his appetite for whispers. What followed was chaos, but it was one line of chaos, one rising wave. Pamela crying that she had already ordered custom drapes. Grant shouting at Evan for exposing them. Lauren demanding to know whether the assisted living place had been real. Mia crying in the hallway. The deputy repeating the same instruction in a voice that got flatter every time. Simone, Ruiz's associate, walking room to room with a legal pad, documenting what had been moved. And me, standing in the center of my courtyard beside the fountain I had tiled myself, feeling something I had not felt in months. Solid. Not happy. Not triumphant. Solid. When Lauren came out carrying a weekend bag and that cream dress suddenly looked too expensive for the day she was living, she stopped in front of me. Dad, she said, and her voice was small now, the way it used to be when she came to my room after a nightmare. I didn't think it would go this far. I believe that. She had thought it would go exactly as far as it benefited her. I don't think she imagined the point where benefit becomes consequence. You took my home, I said. Her mouth trembled. I was trying to keep everything together. No. You were trying to keep everything comfortable. She cried then, really cried. 10 years earlier that would have undone me. Not anymore. I looked at the brass key in Mia's hand. Give that to your mother, I said softly to her. Mia hesitated, then placed it in Lauren's palm. Lauren stared down at it. Rose's key. The weight of the house. The promise of it. The thing she had hidden in a purse like a trophy. Then I said the line I think Rose had been waiting a year for me to learn. You don't get a key to a place you were willing to erase me from. Lauren closed her fingers around it and sobbed harder. I wish I could tell you that in that moment she understood everything. People love that ending. It isn't the truthful one. What I saw on my daughter's face was not full understanding. It was collapse. The sudden realization that money, status, marriage, property, parents-in-law, all the scaffolding she climbed onto, could not stop the ground from giving way when truth arrived with documents. She left with Evan. Not because they were united. Because humiliation makes cowards cling to the nearest familiar thing. Pamela and Grant left separately. They were already fighting by the time their SUV rolled through the gate. By noon, the villa was mine again in the most technical sense, and wrecked in all the ways that mattered. Rose's quilt smelled like somebody else's perfume. The master closet had strange velvet hangers mixed with ours. My study drawers were dented. One of the lanterns by the courtyard had been swapped for some trendy brass fixture that looked like a hotel lobby had sneezed. And Rose's blue chair still had a broken leg. That was the part that finally made me sit down and cry. Not the deed. Not the hearing. Not the guests leaving. The chair. Because Rose used to fall asleep in it with one hand tucked under her cheek and a history book open on her chest. Because Mia learned to read in that chair. Because Lauren used to climb into it after bad dreams and ask her mother whether mornings could be postponed. I sat on the floor beside it until Reese found me. She didn't say I'm sorry. She just crouched down and said, "We got notice from the court. The conservatorship petition has been denied." I laughed through tears. "Anything else?" "Yes," she said. "Preliminary criminal review on the deed fraud has been opened." That wasn't joy either. Justice rarely arrives as joy. It arrives as weight shifting off your spine one plate at a time. The next few months moved faster than grief and slower than anger. That's the only way I know to describe it. The forged deed was voided. The refinance correspondence became evidence. Tessa lost her commission but avoided worse by cooperating early. Grant and Pamela tried, through separate lawyers, to claim they had relied in good faith on family representations. That argument died when the audio surfaced and the timing of the hospital records lined up clean as bone. Evan lost more than he expected. His firm didn't love the words title fraud in connection with a public-facing executive. He resigned before they could restructure. His parents sold their second place in Sedona 6 months later. Whether from legal expense or shame, I don't know. Maybe both. Lauren moved into a rental across town after she and Evan split. Yes, split. Not immediately. Not dramatically. Just the slow, ugly collapse that comes when two people built on convenience, and each discovers the other was always willing to trade somebody away. She wrote me letters. 5 of them. The first defended everything. The second blamed Evan. The third blamed grief. The fourth was the first one that sounded even partly like a daughter. I answered none of them for a long time. People get very uncomfortable when you refuse both revenge theater and instant forgiveness. They want stories like this tied in a bow. Monster punished. Victim healed. Family restored. Real life is harder. Mia still came to see me. That part mattered most. At first through supervised arrangements and lawyers and calendars and all the sterile machinery adults create after they poison a child's sense of home. Then later, more naturally. Saturdays in the courtyard. Homework at the kitchen island. Lemon cookies from Rose's old recipe card. She asked questions in careful pieces. Did Mommy hate you? No. Then why did she do it? Because wanting the wrong things for too long can make people betray the right ones. She thought about that. Children do not need polished lies. They need words sturdy enough to stand on. One afternoon, maybe 8 months after the brunch, I took Rose's brass key to a locksmith and had it cleaned, not copied. Cleaned. That felt important. I repaired the blue chair myself. Glued the cracked joint, replaced one dowel, sanded, painted, reinforced underneath where no one could see. When I set it back in the den by the lamp, the room exhaled. I also changed something bigger. I'd put the villa into an irrevocable trust. Not for Lauren. For Mia, eventually, if she wanted it when she was grown, with strict protections and an outside trustee who had no interest in flattery, panic, or family mythology. And while I am alive, nobody can move me out of it. Nobody can leverage it. Nobody can turn my life into collateral. The day I signed those papers, I brought the old note Rose had written when we paid off the mortgage. No more owing anyone. I added a second line under hers. No more paying for love. I did meet Lauren again. You probably knew that was coming. It was almost a year later, at a coffee shop with uncomfortable chairs and giant windows that make every conversation feel observed. She looked older. Not in the face. In the shoulders. She cried less than I expected. That was good, she said. I kept telling myself I was building security. But if I'm honest, I was building a life where I never had to feel smaller than anyone again. That's not security, I said. That's hunger wearing pearls. She laughed once, then covered her mouth because the laugh turned into a sob. I became them. I didn't rescue her from that sentence. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I told the truth. I can stop living inside what you did. That's different. She nodded like she understood the difference. Maybe she did. Maybe she had to lose everything first. We are not close now. But we are not ghosts either. Sometimes adulthood is just the acceptance that love may survive where trust never fully grows back. As for the villa, it is quieter these days. Better quiet. The kind that sounds like doves on the roof in the early morning and the fountain clicking on at dusk. The kind that lets memory sit down without immediately dragging grief in after it. I keep Rose's recipe cards in the same kitchen drawer. I keep the deed in a safe no one touches but me. The blue front door still catches the late sun like wet paint. The olive tree finally throws enough shade for 2 chairs. Mia likes to read there now. Last spring she asked if Grandma would have forgiven everybody. I told her, your grandma would have fed them, seen through them, and changed the locks sooner. That made her laugh so hard she snorted lemonade. And sometimes, when I lock up at night, I use Rose's clean brass key instead of the new one. It slides into the deadbolt with a firm old click, the same sound it made the first night we slept there with no curtains and one mattress on the floor and a pizza box between us, exhausted and proud and still owing half the world for lumber. We own it free now. Not just the house. The truth of it. The dignity of it. The right to stand inside our own walls without shrinking. So when people ask me what I lost, I tell them I lost the fantasy that blood automatically means loyalty. And when they ask what I got back, I tell them this. 1 blue door. 1 repaired chair. 1 honest key. And a life no one gets to transfer out from under me ever again.